Welcome back. I know we all know this, but youth sports is supposed to be for the kids, but all too often the parents become part of the story, and they do it for all the wrong reasons. At this Pee Wee football game in Virginia, the parents started brawling during the handshake line. Some of the kids, they literally had to break things up. And after a youth hockey game in Morristown, New Jersey, police, they arrested two people after a coach and a parent started going at it. In Somers, New York, in Westchester County, the coach of the girls' field hockey team was getting abusive texts from unhappy parents, including one that called him a cancer and a dead man walking, again, field hockey. Eventually, he was fired when a group of outspoken parents kept complaining about him. Here he is explaining what happened.
This parent was very upset that his daughter wasn't named captain. He felt that it was embarrassing that she was a senior and she wasn't named captain. And that led to another parent who also felt his daughter wasn't playing enough during the games. She was a junior and she was maybe only getting 30 or 40 minutes, not playing the whole game.
The problem, it is not just limited to our area by any means. Incidents around the country continue to make national headlines for all the wrong reasons. Here are just a couple of examples. Parents and coaches brawling at a youth softball game in Texas. Parents in Florida with a huge melee at a Little League game. I recently sat down with Journal News sports reporter Vincent Mercogliano to talk about what is going on. I am positive this must have struck a nerve, this story, or will strike a nerve, because so many people can relate to this on so many different levels. If anyone's been unfortunate, if I would say, that we've coached our kids' teams or whatever, you're starting to see a different kind of parent, and certainly athletic directors have felt different kinds of pressures, and certainly the coaches are hearing certain kind of voices they haven't necessarily heard to the degree they did in the past. In doing this story, were you surprised by just how prevalent it is? I mean, you cover this as a beat. Did any part of what you found out surprise you?
You know, to an extent, but I will say that it's something I've observed for several years. As a sports reporter, I've been with the Journal News for almost 9 years now, focusing a lot on high school sports, and it was something that was always in the back of my mind because I was witnessing this behavior increasing. You know, and the obvious things are what you see on the sidelines, the people that misbehave, you know, the abuse that referees take. We've written about that in the past, and that sometimes gets to the level where it makes everybody feel uncomfortable. But beyond that, the conversations that I have with coaches, with athletic directors, with parents about the pressure that they feel to do these things behind the scenes, the travel clubs, the private training, the increase that we see in these facilities, you know, not only in this area, but throughout the country, of places that people can go to invest in their kids because, you know, they have dreams of whether it's their kid getting a college scholarship or they just want bragging rights around town. I've just seen an increase in this behavior that really leads to pressure and anxiety on the athletes themselves, because if your parent's spending money on you or if your parent's acting crazy on the sidelines, you're going to feel more pressure to perform.
And you put your finger on it, and in your piece you speak to it to length. It is the travel team phenomenon. I mean, I remember growing up, you know, playing 3 sports, different sports a year, like most kids, right? There was maybe a little travel and stuff here, but, you know, it was the exception, not the norm. Now everybody, and I'm not even talking kids that are playing college ball, everybody feels the need to play travel. There's an expenses you attach to it, but also because of the time commitment, because you're schlepping all over God's creation every Saturday and Sunday and even weeknight practices and whatever. I mean, God forbid it's hockey, right? I mean, I love you got to go to New England to play a hockey game. You can't find enough in the metropolitan area. But my point is, that's the root of this, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at what it was, you know, I'll say back in the day, but even, you know, I was a high school athlete 15 years ago. If you look at what it was 15, 20 years ago, the travel teams were for the elite athletes. You know, there was maybe 1 or 2 travel teams in town. The best of the best would play for that team. Now what we've seen, because the market has grown and more families are interested in getting their kid into that system because they don't want their kid to be at a disadvantage if, you know, the neighbor next door is playing on a travel team and my son isn't or my daughter isn't. So what we've seen now, people are taking advantage of that market. So businesses are, instead of having 1 elite team, they're adding a second, a third, a fourth. I had several athletic directors through the process of putting the story together say, you know, one quote we use is, anyone will take your money. And now what we're seeing is that market is growing because people are recognizing, well, you know, if there's 20 kids that want to make this team, but I only have 10 spots, what am I going to do? I'm going to add another team because I want to take more of that money. Now, that's not to shine a bad light on all of the travel teams, because for the elite athletes, you know, that stuff is great. But now what we found is that everybody wants to put their their kids in position to be elite, and that has increased the frequency that we're seeing with
and
that.
it's almost like it's turned on its head. I remember, I don't know about you, but as a kid, playing for your high school team was the ultimate goal, unless you were a tremendous athlete and you were going to be in some college or even beyond. But now, I know some of the better athletes won't even play for the high school teams. They're playing for these travel teams and everything else. And a lot of the noise that you'll hear from the sidelines, as you find in your reporting, is frustrations by the parents that they're spending all this money, they want their kid to get ahead, and they're being told all the things they want to hear from the travel team coaches. Why isn't Johnny, you know, in the starting lineup? Or why isn't he getting more time than somebody else? And all the politics that get attached to it. I get the sense that it's a lot less fun to be a coach today in high school than it was 10, 15 years ago.
Absolutely, and that's something that we hear commonly from coaches all the time. Guys getting out of it because they just can't take it anymore. I mean, one of the coaches I interviewed for the story spoke about him being a second-year varsity basketball coach in the area. His team made the state championship game, which is the ultimate goal for any team, and that night or that next morning he had an email from a parent that was complaining about playing time. The game was played on a Saturday night. Monday morning, after playing in a state championship game, he's in a meeting with an athletic director and a parent or a group of parents who are complaining about the decisions that he made in the game. That type of micromanaging makes it a lot less fun for coaches, and let's not forget, coaches at the high school level, they're not getting paid a lot of money. Most of them are in it for the love of the game. Now, granted, some are better than others, and there needs to be an avenue for you to address the problem if the coach is doing something wrong. But what a lot of sports psychologists and coaches and ADs advocated for is if the kid has a question about playing time, let your child, encourage your child to take ownership, go to the coach themselves, and have that conversation.
And you report even that the kids seem to know better than the parents. They're embarrassed often by their parents' actions because they know they shouldn't be starting, or they know that, you know, somebody else has been having and deserves to be in there if you're going to play on merit here. The kids actually are better seemingly socialized to this than mom or dad.
Yeah, I had one AD tell me a story about parents went to the Board of Education to complain about a coach, and the parents of that a particular child, that child had sent an email to the athletic director and the coach contradicting everything the parent said, you know, saying the coach taught him some valuable life lessons and he was thanking the coach for the experience. So it almost creates the impression that how much are the parents even talking to their kids? You know, it's really important to have that open line of communication where you know what your child is experiencing. If you're only focused on the results and not the process, that was a common theme with the psychologist, focus on how hard they're playing, the effort they're giving, and whether they're having fun. Don't worry about the results. But, you know, too often we get caught up in the results, and if the playing time isn't there or the wins aren't there, you know, they're likely to blame the coach and not their child.
I once did, Vince, a town hall on the explosion of amateur sports and really the travel phenomenon. And Mike Stanton, formerly of the Yankees, World Series winning relief pitcher for the Yankees, coach at Don Bosco, I believe in New Jersey, a powerhouse. He would have parents coming up to him telling him about how he should run a pitching staff or how kids should be playing or not. He's like, they're playing too much as it is. High school kids, 14, 15, should not be throwing, 80 games a year. That's crazy. But the parents think they know better. To that end, when you speak to coaches, on or off the record, I see names, like I know some of these are legends. And they're either leaving or they're getting fired. It's crazy. And you talk to kids who graduated that played for them, they learn more from practice than they even did from the games from these guys, and they revere them. Who's driving these decisions? Is it the parents?
In many cases, yes. Athletic directors all agreed. We had a panel of 6 of them of varying different experience levels, from Westchester, Rockland, Putnam counties, and they all said that it's more frequent that they're getting complaints from parents, and then what happens is if the parents don't get the answer that they want from the athletic director, if the athletic director backs the coach, the parents will go above that athletic director's head, go to the superintendent, go to the Board of Education. A few people said, parents today, they know the buzzwords to use to get a coach investigated. And unfortunately, a lot of times it becomes easier for administrators to say, you know what, we're just going to move on because we don't want to deal with these lengthy meetings anymore.
Now, you did a survey Give an idea of some of the findings, especially the ones that jumped out at you.
Well, the two that really jumped out, I mean, you kind of had a feeling of what the answers were going to be, but it was overwhelming. We had two questions that asked about the behavior that people witness at these games, youth and high school games. One was, have you been made to feel uncomfortable by the behavior of somebody? And the other one was, have you witnessed an adult in front of a child or a high school athlete berate an official? Those answers, over 750 people took the survey at the time that we published. The answers were like 96% said yes, they had witnessed that. There was a couple other questions that I think were more thought-provoking. Like one of them was, how involved should the parent be? Almost everybody or most people did not click the answer that said, I'm paying for it, I can do whatever I want, which was encouraging, but it was kind of split between should parents be seen and not heard, or should parents have the ability to give some occasional tough love.
And you can read Vincent's special report on LOHA.com right now, or you can see it in the paper in Sunday's Journal News. All right, when we come back, the government releasing yet another alarming report about the dangers of climate change. But the White House is actually enacting policies to make it go from bad to worse. We'll have that after this.